been at McKinsey the early part of my career, serving companies in technology and retail and financial services, and in sort of the 1998 timeframe, decided that I wanted to join the dot-com revolution that was happening in the Bay Area. So I left and I joined a startup. But I was also at the same time writing freelance for Fortune magazine. I was writing articles about management best practices in Silicon Valley because a lot of these very high-growth startups were doing very innovative things to run themselves. And as part of my writing those articles, I interviewed a bunch of venture capitalists. And I met with the team at Trinity a couple times while I was writing these articles, and they kept mentioning how busy they were. And this was 1999, and it was truly, a very vibrant time in the venture world. And so I actually suggested that I could join them. And they thought about it and decided that was a good idea. And so I joined as a principal in 1999 and became a partner 7 years later. So I really learned about venture capital sort of through the apprenticeship model over the years. Well, in many ways, learning the venture industry is, as I said, I sort of feel like I learned through the apprenticeship model, and what that really entailed was, in my early years, in fact, for many years, being able to benefit from Noel and Larry's long history and their pattern recognition, and kind of having them as sounding boards, and helping everything from deal evaluation to board situations, right? Like, when I took on my first board seats and ran into interesting dynamics on the board and how to manage a particular situation, having sort of an open door that I could just walk through and sit down and get great advice. That's what I call mentoring, right? And it's very, it can often be very nuanced and very situation specific. So I think you can learn some of it in a classroom, but I think a lot of it it's kind of like that real-time coaching. It's kind of, some of these like mobile apps for coaching are so popular these days, right? Because it's like bite-sized when you need it, tailored to your needs, right? And that's what I felt like those open doors at Trinity were for me, which is sort of moment in time, specific situation, partners who understood the context because they'd known the history of the investment and could give me really good advice on how to proceed. And I'd say culturally, another thing about Trinity that's been really valuable is very team-oriented, and so there's been this predisposition of sort of helping each other think through decisions. And I think when you're mentoring or bringing somebody new onto the team, in particular, maybe the first woman on your team, that team orientation is really important, as opposed to sort of the siloed, we're all cowboys doing our own investments. Like, that's a little bit harder to survive in, I think. Look, there has been progress, in particular over the last, I'd say, 12 to 18 months. Just last week, I was at the All Raise conference, which All Raise is an organization that was started by women in venture capital to increase the number of women in venture and the number of women founders, or the percent of capital going to women founders. And the conference managed to, fill a ballroom with 350 women venture capitalists, which is quite astounding. Actually, when I think back of what's changed over the last 20 years, since I started in 1999, that would not have been possible 20 years ago. We would have all fit around a relatively modest-sized table. So there has been progress, and that's great, and I think it's really heartening. I think we're not anywhere close to parity, of course, and so there's a lot that still needs to be done. I think, look, maintaining high levels of awareness that there is this disparity, and that an important part of the ecosystem is not part of the venture, or is not equally part of the venture community, is important. I think pressure from both founders who want diverse teams backing them, as well as LPs that want to see diversity in their managers. I think that continued pressure will help us continue to make progress. For me, again, having seen cycles over the years, an important litmus test for me is, hey, when we hit a downturn in venture and there's some contraction, are we still able to maintain and grow our numbers? It's interesting. I felt like Trinity from day one. I don't think there was any change in how they operated at all. I think, and that was probably one of the reasons that the cultural fit was so good. I think that there's always been a fair bit of diversity at Trinity. Not necessarily, there hadn't necessarily been gender diversity, but there had been racial diversity, and I think there was sort of just like an open-mindedness, and maybe honestly the fact that Trinity had a history of investing in consumer companies, where there's higher representation of women in the executive ranks of those companies than you see in traditional tech. So maybe that confluence led to them being not just accepting but embracing of bringing a woman onto the team. But I would say that I benefited over the years from mentorship from both Noel Fenton, who's the founder of Trinity, and Larry Orr, who took over the reins from Noel. And that was crucial to my success at Trinity. And I would say for firms that are bringing on women partners now, or women onto their investment teams now, to actively mentor them.